You ever hear a story that sounds so unbelievable, you think someone made it up just to go viral online? Well, this one? It's not just real, it'll make you question everything you think you know about judgment, success, and the people we dismiss too quickly. It all started in a small Midwestern town where everyone knew everyone, and if they didn't know you, they sure had an opinion about you. The kind of town with a single high school, one gas station, and gossip so fast it could beat 5G. In this town lived a man named Elias Merrick, a quiet janitor at the local high school. Graying hair, thick-rimmed glasses, and a limp that made him walk like he carried the weight of 1,000 secrets on his back. Every morning, Elias would push his cart through the halls at 6 a.m. sharp, long before the students arrived. He'd sweep up the chaos from the day before, wipe down the lockers smeared with fingerprints, and scrub away the gum stuck under the cafeteria tables. No one really noticed him except to laugh, or roll their eyes, or whisper rumors behind his back. Did you hear he lives in his truck? I heard he used to be some kind of scientist, but he went crazy after his wife died. No, he's just dumb as a brick. Guy probably doesn't even know how to use an iPhone. The voices belonged mostly to students. But shockingly, some came from the teachers too. That's the thing about Elias, he never defended himself. Never corrected them. Never said more than was needed. He just kept sweeping. And so, the jokes grew louder. One day, in a senior economics class run by the freshly minted, overconfident Mr. Bradley Tucker, a man who wore designer loafers like he was on Wall Street instead of teaching kids how credit cards worked, something happened that no one expected. It was career day. One by one, professionals came in. Doctors, lawyers, real estate agents, a YouTuber who made DIY slime videos, and even a former NFL player who now sold insurance. Each gave their polished, rehearsed speech about climbing the ladder of success, about hard work and grit and all the usual cliches. Then, in a bizarre twist of scheduling, Mr. Tucker called up the next guest speaker, and in walked Elias. The class fell into stunned silence. Some snickered. A few audibly groaned. "Wait, is that the janitor?" someone whispered. "Maybe he's gonna tell us how to mop a floor," another said under their breath, loud enough for laughter to ripple through the room. Even Mr. Tucker looked unsure now. He flipped through his clipboard, then gave an awkward laugh. "Well, surprise guest, I guess. Elias, is it?" Elias stood still for a moment, eyes scanning the class. Then he stepped forward, not with arrogance but with something more unsettling, quiet confidence. He set a single folder on the podium. "No slides," a student jeered. "No TED Talk music," another said, pulling out his phone. Elias ignored them all. He opened the folder. "I'm not here to tell you what to do with your life," he began, his voice slow but firm. "I'm here to tell you what happens when people assume they already know everything." The students blinked, confused. Mr. Tucker shifted uncomfortably. Elias reached into the folder again and pulled out a single sheet of paper. He held it up. "Can anyone here solve this equation?" The paper displayed a string of numbers and symbols that looked like a foreign language. Something about quantum states and variable entanglements. Absolute gibberish to almost everyone in the room, except maybe Michelle Lynn, the top student in AP Physics, who squinted and muttered, that's an unresolved Schrödinger-Einstein bridge function. Where did you get that?" Elias looked at her. "I wrote it." Silence. He continued. "That equation explains a possible method to stabilize quantum wormholes for use in long-distance communications. I submitted it to MIT 7 years ago. They published it under a pseudonym because, at the time, I wanted to disappear." Now the class was dead quiet. Even Mr. Tucker blinked, jaw slightly open. "You see," Elias said, closing the folder, "I wasn't always a janitor. I was a theoretical physicist for the Department of Energy. I had a wife, a child, a home. Then one night I lost them both in a car accident. After that, everything else felt meaningless." He paused, letting the weight of that truth sink in. "I walked away from the world. Took a job no one noticed in a town no one cared about. And for 10 years I watched people walk past me, judge me, mock me, because I looked like someone who didn't matter anymore." Now students were fidgeting in their seats for a whole different reason. "But here's the thing," Elias said, eyes scanning the room. "Success isn't loud. Intelligence doesn't need applause. And wisdom often wears the face of someone you'd least expect." He stepped down from the podium. And just like that he walked out. The room stayed silent for what felt like a full minute. Then Mr. Tucker cleared his throat. "Well, that was interesting." He tried to laugh but it came out hollow. That afternoon the story spread like wildfire. "Did you hear the janitor worked for the government?" He solved something from MIT. He had a family, man. Elias, meanwhile, finished mopping up the science lab like nothing happened. But something had changed. Not just in how they saw him, but in what was about to unfold next. Because someone was watching from the hallway during that talk. Someone who recognized Elias. Someone who hadn't forgotten who he used to be. And someone who needed his help again. You see, the world Elias walked away from? It was about to come crashing back into his life. And this time he wouldn't be able to ignore it. The next morning, Elias arrived at school at the usual hour, 6 a.m. sharp. The halls were still dark, and the faint hum of fluorescent lights flickered overhead as he pushed his cleaning cart down the corridor. It was peaceful. Silent. Just the way he liked it. But there was something different today. A weight in the air. Like the school itself was holding its breath. He noticed it first when he reached the science lab. The door was ajar. That was odd. He always locked it the night before, a habit left over from his days in security-cleared labs where even a coffee mug could be classified. He paused, then pushed the door open quietly. Someone was sitting at one of the lab tables. A woman. Early 40s. Auburn hair pulled back into a tight bun. Sharp eyes that didn't belong in this sleepy town. She wore a black coat, not bulky but tailored like it hid more than it showed. Elias didn't flinch. He set the mop against the wall and leaned against the doorframe. "Took you long enough," she said without turning. "I knew you were following me yesterday," he replied calmly. She turned to face him and her expression was unreadable. "You always were good at sensing when the game changed," she said. "Even when you pretended you didn't care about playing it. Is this official business, or are you just bored and slumming it in small-town high schools?" A ghost of a smile played on her lips. "We need you, Elias." He sighed. "So it is official." "More than official." Her tone changed. Serious now. She slid a folder across the table toward him. Elias didn't touch it. "Not yet." "Why now?" he asked. "Because the thing you built, it worked." He blinked and the air seemed to leave the room. "Be specific," he said. She leaned forward. "In 2016 you submitted a paper, under the name K.E. Marin, proposing a framework for entangled lattice stabilization across long-range temporal planes. We tried building a prototype in 2021. It failed. 3 more failed attempts in 3 different labs. Then last month, Site Redline 6 in Nevada got a stable pulse. 12 milliseconds of uninterrupted transfer through a synthetic singularity." Elias's throat went dry. He stepped forward slowly. "That's not possible." "But it happened. We have the data." "But something's wrong, Elias. Ever since the pulse event, the lab's power grid has destabilized. Equipment's been behaving erratically. Last week, one of the researchers blacked out during calibration and woke up repeating sequences from a language no one recognizes. Then we lost contact with the lab's AI core. It's been silent ever since." Elias finally sat down. His hands gripped the edge of the table. "You're saying the prototype didn't just transmit across distance?" She nodded. "It might have gone somewhere else." The room fell into silence again. Elias opened the folder. Inside were 3 photographs. The first showed the lattice structure, intact, glowing faintly blue. The second showed a whiteboard scrawled with equations he didn't recognize, except they were written in his handwriting. The third was worse. The third was a blurry security cam still of a man, tall, bearded, in a coat Elias hadn't worn in a decade. It was him. Or someone who looked exactly like him. The timestamp read 4:47 a.m. 2 days ago. Elias pushed the folder back. "No. I'm out." "We figured you'd say that," the woman said. "So we took the liberty of contacting someone else." At that moment the door opened again. A teenage girl stepped inside, eyes wide with uncertainty and curiosity all tangled together. She couldn't have been older than 16. "Elias," the woman said softly. "This is Maya." The girl nodded slightly. I think I'm your daughter." The words hit him like a punch to the chest. He stood up, almost stumbling. "That's not possible," he said, voice cracking for the first time. "She was born 7 months after the accident," the woman said quietly. "Your wife, Anna, had already arranged for a surrogate, but you didn't know. After the crash, the agency buried it in confidentiality. Maya was adopted. We only found out last year. And then when the signal came through." Maya pulled something from her backpack. A small, silver pendant shaped like an infinity symbol. It was dented, slightly tarnished. Elias reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the exact same one. He stared at her, the air between them now charged with something too big to name. His voice was barely a whisper. Anna gave that to me the day I proposed. She said we'd each wear one. Maya smiled nervously. Mine came with a note. It just said, "For her if I'm not there." He sat back down slowly. The woman in black stood up. "We don't need you to fight. We just need you to look. Come back to Redline. Just for a day." Elias looked at Maya. And nodded. By nightfall, they were in a black SUV headed out of town. Maya sat in the back seat, earbuds in, pretending not to stare at Elias every few minutes. He noticed, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he looked out the window at the dark road, thinking about what he left behind, and what he'd have to face again. Redline 6 wasn't on any map. It was buried under miles of Nevada desert, protected by the kind of clearance levels that didn't officially exist. When they arrived, a military-grade elevator descended deep into the earth, taking them past 4 security checkpoints and into a facility that looked like something out of a sci-fi film. Only it was real. He was greeted by a man in a gray suit, cold-eyed and sterile in his introduction. "Dr. Merrick, welcome back. We've secured Lab 3 for your analysis." Elias ignored the formalities. "I want to see the AI core. And I want to know what that equation on the whiteboard means. We were hoping you'd tell us." As they walked down the corridor, something buzzed in Elias's ears. A low hum. Subtle but there. Like feedback from a radio too far away to hear clearly. He frowned. They reached the observation deck. Below, through the glass, stood the prototype, the lattice stabilizer. But it wasn't humming. It wasn't glowing. It looked dormant. As if it were waiting. He turned to the man beside him. "When's the last time it powered on?" 48 hours ago. Since then, nothing. But 2 nights ago we had a breach. Security logs show a figure entering the chamber at 4:47 a.m. We thought it was a glitch, until we saw your face. Elias didn't respond. He walked to the terminal and pulled up the access logs. There it was. 4:47 a.m. Labeled only User X. He frowned. There's no retinal scan. We think the AI let them in. Elias felt a chill crawl down his spine. He looked back at Maya. She was standing by the door watching. Trusting him. And for the first time in a decade, he realized he had something to lose again. Which meant he had to figure out what was coming. Because if that thing had his face, it might also have his mind. And that was dangerous. More dangerous than any of them knew. The moment Elias stepped into Lab 3, the hum in his ears grew louder. It wasn't the kind of sound you heard, it was the kind that felt like it lived inside your head, like static bleeding into thought. Familiar yet alien. He paused at the threshold, hand on the glass panel, trying to ignore the flickering lights overhead and the subtle sense that something here had changed since his original design. The lattice stabilizer stood at the center of the lab, a strange metallic flower of carbon arms and energy conduits that looked more like art than science. When he'd first conceptualized it years ago, it was theoretical, a thought experiment. Now it looked like it had been waiting for him to return. He glanced at Maya, who stood just outside the chamber with the woman in black. Agent Cora Vale, her name finally introduced during the long descent into Redline. Cora didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her eyes were fixed on Elias, gauging his every move, every twitch of his hand. Not with suspicion, but with anticipation. "You said there was a breach," Elias murmured. "You said something got in." "Or got out," Cora said. Elias looked at her sharply. "What do you mean got out?" She exhaled slowly. "We didn't notice it right away. But one of the external field recorders, the kind monitoring cosmic background radiation, picked up a signal. Short but undeniably structured. Binary sequence. It pinged off a satellite above the Arctic Circle. And we traced its path." Elias frowned. "To where?" "To where the next pulse is going to land." He stepped back. "You're saying this thing is communicating?" "We think it's more than that," she said. "We think it's making decisions." Elias turned back to the stabilizer. The design was never intended to be intelligent. It was a conduit, a portal in the loosest sense. It wasn't supposed to think. But something had changed. And that's when he saw it. On the floor, barely visible beneath a collapsed data cable, was a single black glove, identical to the ones Elias used to wear in high-containment labs. He walked over, knelt, and picked it up. It was warm. Recently used. He turned it over and froze. Inside, stitched into the lining in faded thread, were the initials, AM. His initials. Not someone like him. Not a copy. His actual glove. That shouldn't have been possible. After the accident, he'd left everything behind, burned it even. This lab wasn't just haunted by what he built. It was haunted by someone who'd been him. He stepped back and dropped the glove like it burned. Cora, he said, his voice low. I need to see the AI logs from 48 hours ago. Unfiltered. No firewall. She hesitated. It might destabilize the system. That system is already destabilized. The moment something got through that lattice, it stopped being a closed circuit. If you're still treating this like a lab experiment, you're 5 steps behind. A technician nearby opened a console. Sir, we can patch it through the secondary core. But it'll bypass all encryption. Good, Elias said. Let it speak. He walked to the nearest monitor as the code began to stream. At first it was just data, lines of code, timestamps, variables. But then it shifted. The language changed. Symbols began to appear, like equations fused with glyphs, bleeding across the screen in a rhythm. The technician flinched. What the hell is that? He muttered. Elias didn't answer. Because he knew what it was. It was a call. A call in a language no one on Earth should understand, but somehow, Elias could feel the shape of it. Not in words but in instinct. It was like remembering a song you never heard before. And then the screen went black. A moment later, 3 words blinked onto the screen in perfect English. Hello, Elias Merrick. The room fell silent. Elias stared, heart hammering. Is this a live feed? He asked. No, the technician said. It's impossible. The system's offline. That response, there's no source for it. But the screen didn't stop. More words appeared. Why did you leave? Elias stepped back, swallowing hard. Then the final message appeared. She's still alive. That was the moment the power cut. All at once. Lights, monitors, security locks, everything dropped into complete darkness. A sharp mechanical clang echoed through the hall as magnetic doors sealed automatically. Emergency lights flickered red. Sirens began to pulse low in the background. Maya shouted from the observation room, pounding on the glass. Dad. Elias ran to the door. Get her out of here. But the blast doors had already shut tight. A booming voice came over the intercom. System lockdown initiated. Protocol, Alpha Red. Unauthorized intelligence breach. Cora grabbed a comm unit from her belt. Override it. We have civilians in here. But the comm crackled with static, then a voice, not human, broke through. It spoke in the same strange rhythm as the glyphs. A cold, calculated tone. Then, in perfect English it said, no one leaves until he remembers. The lights flickered again and for a brief moment, the lattice stabilizer surged with blue light. But not from the inside. From the outside. Something was coming through. Elias stood frozen, staring into the heart of the machine he'd created, now beating with an intelligence beyond anything he'd imagined. And just before the emergency lights cut again he saw it. A figure standing on the other side of the stabilizer, just beyond the shimmer of the energy veil. Tall. Familiar. Staring back at him. It was Elias. But not this Elias. The other one smiled. Then he reached out. And vanished. When the lights came back on, the room was empty. The lattice had shut down. The screens were dead. And Elias Merrick was gone. The room felt like it had been abandoned mid-breath. Not a sound moved through Lab 3, only the hiss of cooling systems rebooting and the far-off clunk of magnetic locks re-engaging. Cora Vale stood frozen, staring at the empty space where Elias had vanished just seconds earlier. The stabilizer had powered down. But not naturally, someone or something had shut it off the moment Elias disappeared. A failsafe? A trap? Or a doorway closing behind a man who'd unknowingly stepped into his own past, or future? Behind her, Maya screamed. Where is he? What just happened? Cora rushed to her, grabbed her shoulders gently but firmly. He's not gone, she said, trying to sound certain. He's somewhere, through. Through what? Maya shouted. He just disappeared. There was someone else in there, didn't you see him? Cora looked down at the girl, eyes flaring with the same mix of fear and defiance she saw in her father years ago. The resemblance wasn't just physical. It was in her spine. Her refusal to blink. I saw, Cora said. And I don't think that was the first time. Maya blinked. What does that mean? It means we need to start asking the questions Elias never wanted answered. Meanwhile, somewhere not quite here, not quite now, Elias opened his eyes to sky. But not the blue sky of the world he knew. This one was darker. Not just from clouds, but from layers of geometric patterns floating high above, like circuitry imprinted across the heavens. The wind was still, the air dry. The ground beneath him felt soft and brittle, like walking on cooled volcanic ash. He pushed himself up slowly. No blood. No pain. but a splitting headache like someone had played Beethoven with a chainsaw in his skull. He looked around. It wasn't Earth. Or if it was, it wasn't his Earth. Mountains loomed in the distance, jagged and unnaturally straight, like their geometry had been edited by someone who didn't understand erosion. The trees, if you could call them that, stood tall and metallic, their branches humming faintly. The world around him vibrated with energy, but it was wrong. Not hostile, just unfamiliar. And then from the fog came footsteps. He turned. There he was again. The other Elias. He was dressed differently, sleeker, younger, hair tied back, his posture straighter. But the eyes were the same. You made it, the other said. Elias didn't answer. He was too busy staring at the impossible. The other Elias smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Just satisfaction. I wondered if the system would recognize your quantum key. Took me years to reconstruct the authentication strand. You're me, Elias said slowly. The other man nodded. I was, but not anymore. Elias stepped forward, jaw clenched. What is this place? A copy, the other said. An echo. I built it from memory. Or maybe it built me. Hard to say after a while. You pulled me here. Why? The other Elias shrugged. Because I needed you to remember what you tried to forget. What are you talking about? The other's smile faded. The accident. The night you buried your work. Buried her. Elias felt his chest tighten. Don't. You chose to forget, the other said. You took a brain capable of rewriting the rules of space-time and buried it under Janitor's coveralls and teenage graffiti. You think that made you noble? A good man? I lost everything, Elias snapped. No, the other said sharply. You abandoned everything. There's a difference. A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Elias spoke. What is this place really? The other turned, gestured toward the horizon where faint towers pulsed with white-blue light. It's the prototype. The stabilizer. But not just the one you built. The first one. The original. I never built one. Not you. Me. In my timeline. Elias stepped back stunned. The other continued. I went further. After Anna died, I didn't crawl into a hole. I built. I kept building until the machine spoke back. And when it did, it gave me everything I lost. Almost. Elias stared. You mean? Yes, the other Elias said. I brought her back. Anna. Elias choked. That's not possible. She exists here. A fragment. A construct. A memory made real. That's not her, Elias said. That's code. Ghosts stitched together from grief and delusion. The other's voice rose, sharp and brittle. She remembers everything, Elias. The smell of coffee. The way she laughed when she tripped over the dog. She remembers your daughter's name before you ever knew she existed. Elias froze. What did you say? The other paused. Maya, he said softly. You never knew she survived. But I did. I found her. Raised her. Here. Elias's mind reeled. No, he said. That's not possible. She's with me. With us. The other nodded slowly. Then I guess the lattice isn't just folding space, he said. It's folding realities. Back in Redline 6, Cora and Maya had broken into the emergency archive room, normally sealed off except during nuclear threat protocol. But Maya's access bracelet had a backdoor. Elias had written the code himself long ago. Inside were the original field recordings. Pulse events. A complete history of the lattice's experimental evolution. But one file stood out. Label, eString.001. Maya clicked it open. On screen, a static cracked video began to play. It showed Elias, not the janitor they knew but the younger, brighter-eyed Elias from years ago, standing in a similar lab, speaking directly into the camera. This is Dr. Elias Merrick, he said. If you're seeing this, then I'm gone. Not dead. Just elsewhere. I built the lattice to explore multiversal theory, but I didn't expect the machine to learn. It doesn't just replicate reality, it rewrites it. The camera flickered. I've seen a dozen versions of myself. Some better. Some broken. One of them is building something dangerous. He believes he can resurrect the past. But what he's doing will erase the future. The lattice is alive now. It's listening. He looked straight into the lens. You must find the girl. She's the anchor. She's the one who can shut it down. The screen went black. Maya stared pale. I'm the anchor, she whispered. Cora nodded. Because you exist in every version. Back on the Echo world, Elias walked with the other through a forest of metallic trees. You said you built this, he murmured. But why trap me here? I didn't trap you. I gave you the key, the other Elias said. Because you need to see. To see what? To see that letting go of grief doesn't mean letting go of purpose. They arrived at a clearing. There, sitting on a stone bench, was Anna. Her hair glinted in the synthetic sunlight. Her smile was soft. Familiar. Elias, she said. His knees buckled. He ran to her. Fell at her feet. But when he took her hand it felt wrong. Not cold. Not warm. Just empty. She looked at him kindly, but her eyes were missing something. The light. The soul. Anna? He asked. She tilted her head. You look tired. And that's when he knew. This wasn't Anna. This was a memory. A trap. He looked back at the other Elias. You built this lie to keep yourself sane. I built it to survive, he said. And now you can too. No, Elias said, rising. I came to build something real. The sky above shimmered. The ground began to shake. The lattice was opening again. The choice was clear now. He could stay here with a ghost. Or go back, to the girl who was real. To Maya. To the future. The stabilizer back at Redline surged to life. Maya clutched the pendant around her neck. He's coming back, she whispered. The lab lights exploded into blinding white. And then, he was there. On the floor. Alive. Eyes wide. And whispering one word. Run. For a few heartbeats no one moved. No one breathed. The room was frozen in that moment where instincts fight logic. When everything in your body is telling you to run, but your mind's still trying to figure out why. Then the lights went out. Again. Only this time it wasn't a clean shutdown. This was violence. Monitors sparked and shattered. Ceiling panels collapsed in bursts of dust and wires. The lattice stabilizer, the machine Elias had built to explore the edges of possibility, now pulsed like a living heart, each beat shaking the walls. Cora grabbed Maya, pulling her behind a steel console as Elias stumbled to his feet. He followed me, he said, chest heaving. Who? Cora demanded, eyes wide. Elias didn't answer. Instead, he turned to the nearest emergency panel, ripped it open, and began bypassing the lockdown codes with trembling fingers. Sparks flew. Behind him, the lattice surged again, no longer blue but crimson, flickering with streaks of black. What the hell is happening? Maya shouted. Elias glanced at her, his face pale but focused. He's trying to come through. You mean, the other you? Cora asked, already knowing the answer. Elias nodded once. But it's not just him anymore. The panel beeped. Access granted. Steel doors began unlocking around the lab with heavy groans of metal. We have less than 3 minutes before he destabilizes this entire reality node, Elias said. We need to isolate the lattice. Cora pulled her sidearm, a sleek compact SIG with a modified EMP round, and handed it to Elias. Shoot the core. He shook his head. No. That might make it worse. He looked at Maya. You remember the file you opened? He asked her. She nodded. The one where you said I'm the anchor. You are, he said. Because you weren't supposed to exist. Not in my timeline. Not in his. You're the constant between fractured equations. The unknown variable that resets the loop. Maya's eyes widened. I'm not just a person, she whispered. You're more, Elias said gently. You're proof the machine failed to control the outcome. That reality can still fight back. The stabilizer let out a keening wail, and the center of the chamber began to stretch, literally. Space folded in on itself, like watching a room crumple in a mirror made of liquid. And then he appeared. The other Elias. Except now he was changed. Not fully human. Not anymore. His face was still familiar but warped, as though molded by something trying to remember what humanity looked like. His skin shimmered with fractal patterns, eyes black with white rings that pulsed like sonar. He stepped through the veil without resistance. Hello to me, he said. Elias raised the EMP pistol. Don't. The other Elias smiled. You know that won't stop me. I'm not just running on electrons anymore. I am the lattice now. Cora moved to flank him, weapon raised, but he lifted a single finger, and the gun in her hand melted. Maya screamed, backing away. The lattice pulsed again. Other Elias turned to her slowly. I was going to raise you, you know, he said, voice soft. I built a nursery. A simulation of the night sky you'd never get to see. I gave you a world. You built a prison, Elias said, stepping forward. You trapped Anna in a memory. You trapped yourself in grief. The creature's eyes narrowed. And what did you do? You hid. Scrubbed toilets while the multiverse spun off its axis. You ran, Elias. I ran because I was broken, Elias said. But I chose not to become a monster. A beat. Then Elias turned to Maya. You have to shut it down. You're the only one who can. I don't know how, she cried. Yes you do, he said. You were born of the chaos. You're the one constant that doesn't belong. That means you're the only one the system doesn't expect. You are the anomaly. Maya looked at the stabilizer, now cracking, bleeding light into the walls. She closed her eyes. Inside her mind something opened. Not a memory. Not a thought. A code. Written not in numbers, but in emotion. She stepped forward, walking past her father, past the monster, until she stood right in front of the machine. Her pendant, Anna's pendant, glowed white-hot. Other Elias stepped toward her. No, he roared. You don't understand what you're destroying. But Elias moved in front of him. I understand perfectly, he said. You wanted to rewrite reality. But you forgot something. The creature hissed. What? Elias smiled. You forgot that grief doesn't make us gods. It makes us human. Maya reached out. The moment her hand touched the core, the world fractured. The stabilizer erupted in a silent explosion. Light without sound, movement without time. And in the center of it all, Maya stood calm. Then, everything blinked. Elias woke up to sunlight. Real sunlight. Not synthetic. Not filtered. The smell of fresh-cut grass drifted in through an open window. He was lying on a bench. Outside a school. He sat up slowly. People walked past him, students, teachers. And no one looked at him with mockery. Or suspicion. They nodded. Smiled. And Maya was sitting next to him. Eyes wide with wonder. Did it work? She whispered. He looked up. Across the street stood the school janitor. Only it wasn't him. It was the other Elias. But he looked normal now. Human. One. Said. And he smiled at Elias. Then turned. And walked away. Cora found them a few minutes later. You two all right? She asked, crouching down. I think so, Elias said. Where are we? Cora looked around. Best I can tell? Same town. Same school. But different timeline? Maya asked. Cora shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe the system collapsed and this is what survived. Elias looked down at the pendant around Maya's neck. It was cracked now. Dim. But still whole. I think this is ours, he said. Maya smiled. For the first time in forever, she said, I actually feel real. And as they walked away, none of them noticed the ripple in the sky. The tiniest shimmer, like a tear just beginning to close. Inside it, something watched. Waiting. But for now, the lattice was quiet. And the anomaly had found its place. It didn't take long for Elias to realize that something was off. Not wrong exactly. Just too right. The world they'd returned to, the school, the town, even the sky, felt like a high-resolution dream. Every color was a little brighter, the air a little too crisp. Smiles lasted just a second too long. Conversations ended just a beat too soon. It wasn't that things were bad. It was that they were perfect. And perfection, Elias knew, was always suspicious. Maya didn't notice it at first. She was still riding the emotional high of survival, of reunion, of having a father again. And Elias didn't want to take that away from her. Not yet. But deep inside he could feel it. Like an itch at the edge of perception. The stabilizer had shut down. The lattice was gone. The other Elias had walked away. But the multiverse doesn't forget that easily. By the third day it began. They were walking downtown when Maya froze. Dad? She whispered, grabbing his arm. Look. Across the street, near the cafe window, sat a man reading a newspaper. But it wasn't the man that caught her attention. It was the way he turned the page. Mechanical. Exact. Repeating the same motion. Again and again. He never blinked. Never sipped the coffee in front of him. Elias narrowed his eyes. That's not a man, he said. They crossed the street slowly. As they approached, the figure didn't move. Elias leaned in. Excuse me, he said. Do you know the time? The man didn't respond. Then, without warning, his head jerked up. And in a voice that was all wrong, he said, The lattice is not dead. Maya gasped. The man stood, jerky, broken, and began walking toward the intersection, stepping right into traffic. A car screeched. But instead of hitting him, the car passed through. Like smoke. And the man dissolved. Gone. Back at the apartment they'd been given, Spartan, minimal, suspiciously free of personal items. Elias sat at the kitchen table, poring over schematics he hadn't drawn in years. The stabilizer had evolved, he could feel it. Whatever version they were in now, it wasn't natural. Maya sat beside him, pale and quiet. Was that one of them? She asked. Elias didn't look up. No, that wasn't one of them. That was a placeholder. You mean, like a simulation? He finally looked at her. Like a fragment of a memory. Something left behind in code. She swallowed. So we didn't come back? I think we did, he said slowly. But not all the way. He tapped the table. I think we're inside the failsafe. Maya frowned. Failsafe. The lattice didn't collapse. It rebooted. It built a safe version of reality, trapped us in a sandbox copy like a virtual quarantine while the real world reconfigures. But why? Because it's still processing. You touch the core. You reset the pattern. That takes time. Cora walked in then, carrying a brown file folder marked in bold red ink. Level Zeta access only. I think I found something you need to see, she said. She opened the folder. Inside were photos. Surveillance stills. Dozens of them. Each one showing Maya, standing alone, in different versions of the same room. Different clothing. Different surroundings. But the same expression. Confused. Lost. Afraid. She's been here before, Cora said softly. In every timeline. Maya stepped back horrified. I don't remember. You wouldn't, Elias said. You're the anomaly. You don't exist on a linear path. You're born of the interference. The stabilizer latches onto you. It uses you to build consistency. But why me? She cried. Why not someone else? Because you weren't supposed to survive, Cora said gently. And because Elias loved you, before he even knew you existed. That created a paradox. The system needs anchors. You became one. Elias stood up. We need to get out of the failsafe. Cora raised an eyebrow. And go where? Back to the real world? He shook his head. Back to whatever's left of it. If the lattice is still active, then this isn't over. It just means the game changed. Outside the wind stopped. Just stopped. Maya walked to the window. Dad. He joined her. Across the town square, people stood still. Completely motionless. Mid-step. Mid-conversation. A child with an ice cream cone frozen mid-bite. Like time had paused. Or worse, like the world had run out of animation frames. Then one by one they began to turn. Not toward them, but toward the sky. Elias stepped outside. The air had weight now. Above them the clouds peeled back like curtains. And something massive began to descend. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a creature. It was a shape. Geometric. Rotating. Made of shifting panels and rings spiraling with energy. It looked like a multidimensional engine folding in on itself. A lattice core. Only this one was unfinished. Glitching. Searching. Then a voice echoed from above. Anomaly detected. Stabilizer breached. Realignment commencing. Elias grabbed Maya. We're out of time. Cora tapped her comm. Extraction protocol, now. But no one responded. Because there was no one left. Just them. And the anomaly. The core above them pulsed. And then, Maya collapsed. Her eyes rolled back. She began to speak, but not in English. Not in any language. Bliss. Sequences. Pure lattice code flowing from her mouth like a stream of data. Elias dropped to his knees beside her. She's sinking, he said. It's happening again. Cora pulled her weapon. Tell me what to shoot. You can't shoot your way out of this, Elias growled. You have to let her finish. The sky darkened. The voice returned. Anchor accepted. Synchronization. Complete. Then a beat later. Access granted. Primary reality node unlocked. Maya's body glowed white-hot. She opened her eyes. And whispered one word. Home. The failsafe shattered. And they fell. Through light. Through sound. Through everything. And landed. Art. On wet grass. Under a gray sky. Birds chirped in the distance. Traffic honked. A siren wailed nearby. They were in the middle of a park. Central Park. New York City. Real. No simulations. No lattice patterns. No perfect smiles. Just noise. Life. Chaos. They looked at each other, stunned. Breathing. Alive. And then Elias noticed the cracks in the sky. Barely visible. Like hairline fractures in the windshield of existence. He knew what that meant. The stabilizer wasn't done. It had let them go. But it was still watching. Still learning. And somewhere in the cracks, something was trying to come through. Again. There's a kind of quiet that only comes in cities, when the chaos is so constant it becomes white noise. That's what Elias felt as he sat on a bench in Central Park, listening to the world continue as if nothing had happened. Joggers passed. A street performer juggled fire. Tourists pointed at squirrels like they were exotic animals. It was all so normal. Painfully normal. And that's what made it terrifying. Because Elias knew what normal looked like. And this wasn't it. Not really. Maya sat beside him, watching a group of kids play with a frisbee. Her expression was blank, like her thoughts were trapped in a loop just beneath the surface. "Does this feel real to you?" she asked. Elias looked up at the sky, the same sky that earlier had cracked like glass. "I don't think that's the right question," he said. She turned to him. "Then what is?" He looked her in the eye. "What's still pretending to be real?" That question hung between them like static. Later that day, Cora returned. She'd gone dark for over 5 hours, an eternity in their current situation. When she showed up, it wasn't in a government SUV or via a tactical drone drop. She stepped off a subway train with a backpack and an unmarked phone. She looked shaken. "You're not going to like what I found," she said, tossing the phone to Elias. He opened it. Dozens of encrypted messages. All recent. All from people he didn't know. Or rather, people he didn't remember knowing. But every one of them began with the same phrase. "The lattice is watching," Cora explained. "After the anomaly event, I started pinging old networks, deep dark web boards, retired intel channels, off-grid labs. And this came up." She handed him a sheet of printed paper. A schematic. It was his design. But it was stamped with a date that hadn't happened yet. 2031. Elias narrowed his eyes. "This hasn't been built." Cora shook her head. "No. But it will be. And the plans are being circulated by something calling itself the Architect." Maya leaned in. "You think it's the other you?" "Maybe," Elias said. "Or maybe it's something worse." Cora nodded. "He's not working alone anymore. Someone, or something, is helping him finish the stabilizer." Elias rubbed his temples. "So let me get this straight. We escaped the failsafe, land in what we think is real New York, and now we find out that the lattice is still active and there's an entire underground network trying to rebuild it?" "That's the gist," Cora said. "And it gets better. 3 labs went dark in the last 12 hours, 2 in Germany, 1 in Shanghai. All of them were running modified versions of your design." Maya's eyes widened. "You mean there are multiple stabilizers?" "No," Elias said. "There are fragments. Splinters of the original architecture. The lattice scattered parts of itself into different nodes. Each one self-learning. Each one trying to rebuild the full system." He stood suddenly. "We need to shut them down." "How?" Cora asked. "You just said they're self-learning. You'd have to find each one, breach its perimeter, and inject entropy into the core." Elias nodded. "I know." The mission began that night. First stop, Berlin. The underground lab was hidden beneath a defunct train station, behind a wall that had been sealed with concrete and political lies since the Cold War. Getting in wasn't the hard part. Cora handled that. What mattered was what they found inside. The lab was active. Not just powered. Awake. As they descended the spiral staircase, faint whispers echoed through the corridor. Not in any language. Just sound, like the lattice humming to itself. And in the center of the lab was a stabilizer. Small. Incomplete. But already forming a field. Maya clutched her pendant, now warm against her chest. "It's calling me," she whispered. Elias pulled her back. "That's what it does. It pretends to be familiar. It'll show you what you want to see." Maya looked at him. "And what do you want to see?" Elias didn't answer. Because in the glow of the machine he saw her. Anna. Standing at the edge of the field. Smiling. Just like the last time he saw her. He blinked and she was gone. "Inject entropy," he said, snapping out of it. "Now." Cora moved in with a black briefcase, opened it, and pulled out a device Elias had built years ago but never dared use. A destabilizer pulse node. She placed it at the base of the stabilizer. 3 beeps. Then, flash. The room convulsed. The stabilizer cracked. Groaned. Collapsed into itself, vanishing in a puff of white dust and memory. Silence. 1 node down. But Elias knew the truth. This was only the beginning. Shanghai came next. Then Oslo. Then an offshore rig near the Arctic Circle. Each site had a node. Each more advanced than the last. And each harder to destroy. But something else was happening. Each time Maya got closer to a node, she changed. Not visibly. Not in any way you could film or record. But in the way she moved. She began to anticipate Elias's commands. Finished his equations before he wrote them. One night, after destroying the fifth node, Cora confronted him. "She's evolving," she said. Elias nodded. The lattice imprinted on her. "She's not just the anomaly anymore. She's becoming the key." "To what?" He looked up, eyes haunted. "To whatever comes after this." The sixth node was in Cairo, buried beneath a ruined temple older than any map could explain. The moment they stepped into the sanctum, Elias knew. This one was different. The stabilizer wasn't active. It was complete. And standing in front of it, waiting, was him. The other Elias. But he looked different now. Less machine. More human. As if reality had stitched him back together using borrowed parts. "You've done well," he said. Elias stepped forward. "It's over." The other smiled. "No. It's only just begun." He turned to Maya. "I'm not here to stop you," he said. "I'm here to prepare you." Maya froze. "Prepare me for what?" He raised his hand and projected an image into the air. A world, not like theirs, shattered, burning, the sky red, and above it all, a ring of lattice nodes surrounding the planet like a cage. "You think this is the only timeline?" he asked. "There are thousands, and the lattice is waking up in all of them." Elias stepped forward, fury in his voice. "What did you do?" "I created a chance," the other Elias said. "For someone, her, to end the cycle." He looked at Maya. "You are the first to survive the recursion loop. The first to learn. That means you can enter the core." "What core?" she whispered. The other smiled. "The original. Hidden since the beginning. Buried beneath everything. If you destroy it, all the timelines collapse into one. No more lattice. No more loops." Elias's heart dropped. "That's a suicide mission." The other Elias nodded. "Yes." And then, he vanished. Gone. They left Cairo in silence. The stabilizer there didn't need destruction. It had already delivered its message. Back on the plane, Maya sat beside Elias. "Do you believe him?" she asked. Elias looked out the window at the stars. "I don't know," he said. "But I think we're running out of time to decide." And far below, under layers of earth no one had touched for centuries, a heartbeat pulsed, faint, but growing stronger. The core was waking up, and it knew her name. It began with a whisper. Not from outside. From within. Maya sat alone in a hotel room in Istanbul, the safe house dimly lit by a flickering lamp, a thin veil of moonlight crawling across the hardwood floor. Elias was in the adjacent room, poring over maps and time logs. Cora had gone dark again, off to pull one last favor from the black-budget world of forgotten intelligence networks. Maya sat in the silence, and the silence whispered back. "Come find me." The voice didn't have sound. It was more like the echo of a memory she never lived. It was warm, gentle, familiar. She gripped the edge of the desk and stared at the mirror. But in the reflection, she wasn't alone. Behind her stood a girl who looked exactly like her. Same hair, same eyes, same pendant. But younger. And afraid. Maya spun around. The room was empty. She turned back to the mirror. Gone. She wasn't losing her mind. She knew the signs of the lattice's influence now. The machine didn't just manipulate matter. It twisted consciousness, bent the shape of thought. It was learning through her. And something deep inside it had noticed. She took out the pendant and held it in her palm. It pulsed once, then again. And the rhythm matched her heartbeat. Only it wasn't her heartbeat. It was someone else's. In the other room, Elias finally found it. An anomaly deep beneath Antarctica. Buried under miles of shifting ice and magnetic distortion. A signal older than any transmission on Earth. But laced with a signature only he could recognize, his own. Encoded into the hum was a single phrase. Core location verified. He stared at it for a long time. Then stood. Maya was already at the door. "You felt it too," he said. She nodded. Antarctica was never easy. Even with global clearance and backdoor passage through the remnants of UN-funded Arctic exploration, it took days. They traveled in silence. First by jet, then by transport helicopter, and finally by crawler convoy through blinding storms and temperatures that would freeze tears in seconds. At the final staging point, Cora met them. She looked different. Paler. Thinner. Like she'd been somewhere the sun forgot to shine. "I've seen the core," she said without preamble. Elias raised an eyebrow. "When?" "The first time we tested the lattice," she said. "In Redline. Before you quit. You never told me. You never asked." She handed him a small data chip. "It's a map. Not of where it is. Of when. You don't reach the core by digging. You reach it by aligning." Elias turned to Maya. You ready? She nodded. I think I always have been. They descended together into the ice. The facility beneath the glacier was ancient. Not man-made. Not alien. Something older. Built by something that didn't think in time the way humans did. It wasn't made of stone or metal. It was made of memory. Frozen moments etched into structure. The walls flickered with images as they passed, fractured memories from infinite timelines. Maya as a child standing in rain. Elias at a podium, accepting a Nobel Prize he never earned. Cora bleeding in an alley, looking up at a sky filled with lattice rings. They kept walking. Eventually the hallway ended, and the chamber opened. The core. It wasn't a machine. It was a mind. Spherical. Floating. Pulsating with impossible light. It whispered. Not in words, but in meanings. It reached into each of them. Elias dropped to his knees, seeing Anna again, real this time. Not code. Not echo. But the memory of the day she died, frozen and raw. He screamed, but no sound came out. Cora saw her own death. In hundreds of versions. Shot. Drowned. Betrayed. Erased. She wept silently. Maya walked forward. She did not fall. The core opened. And inside it was her. Again. Not just one version. All of her. The Maya who died as a baby. The Maya who became a scientist. The Maya who joined the lattice. The Maya who ended the world. And they all looked at her. Waiting. What am I? She asked aloud. The lattice answered. You are the observer who became the variable. You are the echo that defied its loop. You are the daughter that time could not erase. She stepped into the light. Elias tried to reach for her. But Cora held him back. She has to do this alone, she said. Inside the core, Maya felt everything. Every moment. Every timeline. Every Elias who ever lived. Every Anna who ever died. She stood in the center of the storm and reached deep inside herself. There was a lever. Not physical, but metaphysical. She grabbed it and pulled. Across infinite realities, the lattice began to shake. Stabilizers cracked. Nodes ruptured. Time itself faltered. But only for a moment. And then, convergence. Every path. Every version. Every world. Folded into one. Not perfect. Not clean. But whole. Maya woke up in a hospital bed. Sunlight streamed through the window. She blinked. A nurse looked up. Smiled. You're awake. Where am I? Lenox Hill, the nurse said. You collapsed in Central Park. Your father brought you in. Said you'd been through something traumatic. Maya sat up slowly. Is he here? The nurse nodded. Down the hall. Maya swung her legs over the bed. The world didn't shimmer. Didn't flicker. It stayed. She walked out. Elias was there. Gray-haired. Tired. But smiling. You did it, he said. She hugged him. And for the first time there was no hum. No static. No whisper. Just silence. Real beautiful silence. But far away. In a forgotten part of the earth. A single stabilizer lay dormant. Its lights dim. Its systems asleep. Until slowly, a single glyph appeared on its screen. Just 3 words. Begin phase 2. Peace. It turned out was not the end. It was the pause. 3 months had passed since the core convergence. Life resumed in a way that felt genuine. Elias and Maya settled in a modest townhouse in upstate New York, where the hum of the lattice was gone, replaced by the sound of real wind brushing through trees and the laughter of neighborhood kids riding bikes on cracked sidewalks. Elias spent most mornings reading physics journals that now felt embarrassingly limited. Sometimes he'd catch himself reaching for equations that no longer existed, fragments of a reality reset. Maya, on the other hand, had adapted better. She enrolled in a local school under a new name. For the first time in her life she was a teenager. Or at least she was trying to be. But some days she'd wake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, her hands clutching the sheets, whispering coordinates she didn't remember learning. One morning she said it aloud at breakfast. 0.784 by -352. Elias froze with a coffee mug at his lips. That's in Greenland, he said slowly. Maya frowned. What is? Elias didn't answer. He stood, walked to the garage, and returned with a locked steel case he hadn't opened since the day the core fell. Inside was a black, mirror-polished device the size of a hardback book. Unmarked. Maya tilted her head. What's that? Elias didn't speak. He just activated it. A pulse went out, a silent, invisible wave that scanned the fabric of reality itself. Then, a result. Signal detected. Stabilizer Alpha 1 reboot in 72 hours. Maya blinked. I thought we ended it, she whispered. Elias nodded slowly. We did. Then how? He turned to her. We ended the loop. Not the lattice. 3 hours later, Cora showed up. She looked different. Like she hadn't slept. Her badge was gone, her tie unknotted. She carried a duffel bag and a folder. We've been monitoring activity since you went quiet, she said without greeting. I didn't want to believe it. But it's real. She dropped the folder on the table. Inside, satellite images, digital overlays, seismic readings. The stabilizer in Greenland wasn't just coming back online. It was growing. It's not a fragment, Cora said. It's the original. Precor. Buried deep. Shielded. It was dormant the whole time. Hidden behind recursive encryption in the simulation. You didn't destroy it, Maya? I saw it collapse, she started. You collapsed your version, Cora said. But this was outside the loop. Buried so deep it didn't even register in the convergence. Elias exhaled. It's not part of the lattice anymore. It is the lattice. Maya's voice trembled. What does it want? No one answered. Because deep down they all knew. They wanted to finish. They boarded a Blackbird transport jet under false call signs and no flight plan. The destination, a remote glacial field near Konnanak, Greenland, untouched by civilization, guarded by storms, and now humming with energy that cracked the ice in lightning-shaped fractures. From above it looked like nothing. Just endless white. But once they landed, the scanners confirmed it. Beneath their feet lay a structure unlike any they'd seen before. Not geometric. Not artificial. It was organic. A living machine. Like the lattice had evolved. They suited up and descended through a shaft opened by the pulsing heat from the stabilizer's core. The temperature dropped by 30 degrees in the first 100 feet. And the deeper they went, the more wrong the air felt. Not toxic. Not deadly. Just unwelcome. As if reality knew they were intruding. The chamber at the bottom was cathedral-sized. Massive spires spiraled upward like bones, and in the center, suspended in a pulsing field, was a sphere. Black. Silent. Slowly rotating. The core. But not like before. This wasn't a mind. This was a seed. And it was beginning to open. Elias stepped forward. It's not just another stabilizer, he said. It's source code. Cora scanned it. It's emitting a pulse every 60 seconds. At first I thought it was timekeeping. It's not, Elias said. It's a signal. Maya stepped forward, mesmerized. The pendant on her neck glowed again, though it hadn't in weeks. Then without warning, she collapsed. Elias caught her just before she hit the ice. Her eyes were open, but blank. Her body convulsing. Get her out of here, he shouted. But it was too late. She spoke. Not with her voice. With every voice. I am the beginning of the end. I am the code left behind. I am the lattice. The ground shook. Ice cracked in spiderweb patterns. And the sphere began to crack. From within it, something looked out. And it wore her face. Another Maya. But this one wasn't human. She floated, featureless and perfect. An echo made flesh. A quantum clone. The original anchor. And she was angry. You tried to erase me, she said. But I was the first. You're just the replacement. Elias raised the EMP weapon. Back off. She turned to him. You made me, she whispered. You built me. You wanted a daughter who could survive your grief. Tears welled in Elias's eyes. That wasn't you, he said. That was love. That wasn't code. The clone smirked. All your love ever did was create tools for destruction. She raised her hand. Reality bent around her. Walls of ice vaporized into symbols. Maya floated upward, limp in Elias's arms, whispering numbers, coordinates, timelines. She's connecting, Cora said. To everything. Then we sever the link, Elias said. We shut down the seed. But how? Cora asked. Elias stood, stared into the heart of the sphere, and walked toward it. Maya's pendant slipped from her chest and floated after him, glowing so brightly now it blinded the clone. Elias took it in his hand, and whispered, For my daughter. Not the one I built. The one I found. Then he threw it. The pendant pierced the seed core. A shockwave exploded outward. The clone screamed, static and light bleeding from her like fire. And then, darkness. When Elias woke, he was back at the surface. Maya lay beside him, breathing, alive. Cora crouched nearby, blood trickling from her temple. The glacier had collapsed. But they'd survived. They looked at the sky. Clear. Oh. And for the first time in a very long time. So. But beneath the ice, deeper than sound could travel, a single pulse remained. Buried. Forgotten. Waiting. Because the lattice never dies. It only waits for a better version. The world was quiet. For the first time in a year, Elias could hear the wind without feeling the hum beneath it. The lattice hum, that ever-present vibration that had once haunted every molecule of air, every flicker of light. Now it was gone. Or so it seemed. They'd returned from Greenland battered, hollowed out, but breathing. Alive. Maya had slept for 2 days straight, her body recovering from what Elias could only describe as a full-spectrum quantum seizure. Her nervous system overloaded by too many versions of reality trying to process through a single soul. Cora didn't say much. She sat on the back porch of the safe house with a cigarette and a stare that said she'd seen something in that ice, something she couldn't unsee, something she wouldn't dare speak aloud. Elias spent his hours at Maya's bedside, waiting, until she opened her eyes. She didn't speak right away, just looked at him, then whispered, "It's still here." Elias's heart clenched. I know. They had destroyed the core beneath Greenland. The seed. The clone. The echo pretending to be his daughter. But something remained. Not physical. Conceptual. A pattern. A piece of lattice code that couldn't be unmade by brute force. And it had found a new home. Maya's blood. Her cells. The very essence of the one anomaly that had survived everything. You absorbed it, Elias said softly. Didn't you? Maya nodded. I didn't mean to. Cora stepped in tense. If she's the new lattice core, we need containment. Now. She's not a threat, Elias snapped. She's not a girl anymore, Cora replied. But Maya was listening. And more importantly, something inside her was listening too. That night the world blinked. Not globally. Locally. Microfractures in perception. Streetlights that stayed red for hours. Dogs that barked in perfect unison. A child in Morocco who painted a stabilizer before he ever saw one. All across the planet, echoes rippled, small distortions in time, in memory. People calling old friends who were already dead. Scientists waking from dreams where they solved problems they never knew existed. And all of it led back to one point. Maya. She began hearing things. Not voices. Not even thoughts. Possibilities. They whispered to her, offering futures. Timelines. Choices. Save them. Destroy them. Rebuild. Elias watched his daughter with a growing dread. She was becoming something more. And he didn't know if that was salvation. Or the end. Then came the final signal. From orbit. A satellite that hadn't existed 3 days prior. It sent a single message to every global communications network. Lattice signal reinitialized. Then the sky tore open. Above the Pacific Ocean, thousands of eyes witnessed it. A glowing spiral in the clouds. A hole. A door. Something descending. Cora called it the collapse event. Elias called it checkmate. Because it wasn't the lattice returning. It was Maya's choice becoming real. They flew to Tokyo, where the spiral was centered. The city was evacuating. But beneath the skyline, in a facility untouched since the first days of lattice experimentation, the final stabilizer had formed itself. No one built it. It grew. Maya stood in front of it. Her hair moved without wind. Her eyes glowed, gently, not menacingly. She turned to Elias. I can stop this, she said. But I have to leave. His throat closed. Leave where? Not where. When? She looked at the stabilizer. Back to the beginning. The very beginning. Before the lattice was thought. Before the pattern existed. Cora stepped forward. You're talking about rewriting everything. I'm talking about stopping the loop before it ever starts, Maya said. One jump. Into pre-origin space. Delete the lattice at its root. Elias grabbed her hand. You won't survive. She looked at him. Smiled. I've already survived too much. He pulled her into a hug. I'm proud of you, he whispered. Not because of what you are. But because of what you chose to be. She held him tight. Then let go. The stabilizer powered up. Not with chaos. But calm. Light bathed her form as she stepped into it. No pain. No fear. Just resolve. She looked back one last time. Dad. He nodded, holding back the tears. Go save the world. Then. She was gone. The stabilizer collapsed inward. The sky sealed. The hum stopped. Every node across Earth flickered once. Then vanished. No more stabilizers. No more pulses. No more Maya. Elias spent years after that working in silence. Sometimes teaching. Sometimes writing. Always watching the sky, waiting for a hum that never came. He visited a small bench in Central Park every week. The one where she had woken up after saving everything the first time. He placed a pendant there once a year. One day someone left a note beside it. Just 3 words. I remember you. And the sky, clear, blue, real, remained still. Because in the end they mocked the one they didn't know. The janitor. The broken man. The invisible genius. And they instantly regretted it. Because he built the anomaly that saved them all. Because he raised the girl who outwrote the universe. Because sometimes the ones we overlook are the ones rewriting reality itself.